Hey y'all, thanks for tuning in to season 2, episode 2. Just give me a new belief system, whatever that looks like. You know, when you're scrolling on your phone and you go to take a picture and you get that message, the most awful message of all messages, the one that says your storage is too full to take the picture that you want to take. And this has happened to me so many times, and I've been like, oh, come on. I just want to capture this memory. I just want to capture this current moment. And my phone is like, no, girl, because you've taken way too many pictures. And so I go scrolling back through, which I know you guys do this too. And even if I have the cloud where I can store things, I like to keep them on my phone so I can go back and look at those memories of my kids. And I go back and I search through, and it's almost like a time capsule, right? So it's like these moments in time from past years where I've screenshotted something or I've saved something, and I start to unravel the spaces that I've been in my past. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this was from a time period where I was going through this. And I remember saving all of these because these screenshots are of, Instagram posts and Facebook posts that spoke to me during that traumatic period in my life. And I start to delete them because I'm not a hoarder. I know some people have hoarder tendencies and they want to keep them, but I start to delete them because I know that if I want to fill my phone with the current memories that mean something to me, if I want something new to be saved in my phone, then I have to get rid of those old things that are no longer serving me. So the messages about being in a narcissistic or traumatic relationship, like I don't need those anymore. I mean, I need them, I need the content to share, but I've experienced it. So I know exactly what that feels like. And so I start to delete all of those images and I start to find that my storage was so full of the things that were no longer serving me that I couldn't even experience and capture the things that are currently going on in my world. And don't we do that with our life too? Like when we're thinking about abundance, right? Abundance can't exist if we're still holding on to the things of old. Because the reality is, and just like the quote that I shared with you guys last week, the reality is that you can't fill a cup with abundance if it's full of limiting beliefs. And when I was choosing my word of the year, and my word of the year is abundance, I immediately thought, okay, I'm just believing for the great things that God's going to do in my life this year. And while that's true, because I am believing for Him to add new memories and download new pieces of information to me and allow me to be in bigger places, what I know and what I landed on pretty immediately was if this is going to be your word, then what are you going to let go of? And just like with our phone, if we want to collect those new memories, then what are you willing to let go of? What are you willing to clean out of your storage so that the space is no longer full? Because if that space is at capacity, there's only so much that your belief system and your brain and your emotional capabilities can handle. And when that's full, whether it's with negative or positive things, you'll start to feel the weight of loading more things onto it, even if the weight is coming from things that feel like a positive experience because your cup is so full of things that aren't serving you anymore. And so if you want something new, you have to let go of the things of old that are no longer serving you. And, when I opened up my phone and I clicked that camera button, my phone looked exactly the same. It looked like it was ready for me to take a new picture, like it was ready for me to create some or collect some new memories, like it was ready to do the function that it's capable of doing. But just because that phone looked ready to receive it doesn't mean that it wasn't already at capacity and that because it was full, it was being blocked. And that same thing is true of us. We might think that we're ready to receive something new. We might think that we're ready to live a life of abundance. But you can't be ready to receive if you're at full capacity and there's something there blocking it, whether it's your limiting beliefs from days of old, whether it's your conditioning, whether it's your trauma, whether it's your lack of self-worth, whatever it is, there are things that have been downloaded into you. There are things that you believe currently that are keeping you from what's the best for you because that thing still exists in there and it's still taking up space. And even if mentally you've told yourself and in your heart you believe that you're ready to receive something new, you cannot receive the newness of what's for you if your capacity is full with things that are blocking it from happening. Just like your phone. I want to collect this new memory. Oh, just kidding, because I still have decades worth of memories that I keep. Every time I get a new phone and I connect the device to the cloud, I keep downloading those back onto my phone in case I might need to pick them up again. And if you're prepared to pick up those old spaces and those old thoughts and those old beliefs, then you're not really prepared to move forward into what actually is for you. So why do our limiting beliefs exist in the first place? Well, I'm always going to go back to conditioning because a lot of what we consider now and a lot of what we know to be true now was downloaded into us our entire childhood, and it's something that we held true. I know that especially people in my generation, if you came from a family where, they were your parents were blue collar workers, or your grandparents or your parents were in the military, there's this idea that you have to work really, really hard and really, really long hours to get that pension, to get into a space that will enable you to retire and be able to enjoy the last 10 to 15 years of your life. Well, my generation was taught that, but we're also seeing these younger kids, this younger generation who are literally creating YouTube channels and becoming millionaires. And you get a lot of shade and hate where you'll hear people say, well, all they're doing is opening up toys on the internet and they're millionaires. But that's a limiting belief. That's you saying the way that I was taught that this should be done is the way that I'm going to continue to believe that it should be done. And because I believe that, I'm blocking the idea that abundance could come from someplace else. So what were you conditioned to believe? What did your family system believe? And are you holding on to those things? Because conditioning creates our internal knowing, some parts of it at least. And also you need to assess what traumas have you experienced and what messages have you carried from those traumas. So if you experienced a toxic relationship, much like the one that I was telling you about, there are things that came from that relationship that I didn't even know were downloaded into my psychological space until much later on, when I processed, why do I think this to be true, right? And so, for instance, I know that I've told you guys this before, and my dad is in a different space now, so he doesn't mind me sharing this information. But my dad was a victim of the opioid crisis, right? He became an addict from that epidemic that happened so many years ago, and from having a dad that I had to give a million chances to because I just wanted him to be better, and I knew that he could, and I knew that he was capable, and I was going to feed into him, and I was going to, really give him the support that he needed. And I felt like if I did that, then perhaps something would change. That trauma, which is what it was, led me to an adult life where I gave men a million chances to do the wrong thing, and I was going to feed into them, and I was going to change the narrative of our situation by simply continuing to give them what I thought they needed and spinning myself on a hamster wheel. And just like with my dad, he recovered when he decided that he needed a change, when recovery was more important than anything else in his life. And in those relationships, those men may never change. And maybe the way that they are is a perfect match for someone else. It just wasn't a match for me. And I was spinning my wheels trying to make the situation better. And I was sitting inside of trauma while doing it. And so a lot of those feelings and thoughts that you have of lack come from the trauma that you've experienced in your life. And that trauma can come from your family of origin. It can come from relationships you've been in. It can come from toxic situations that you have found yourself in. And it can come from like actual traumatic events. And so once you realize that a lot of the beliefs that you have aren't your own, but they've come from those spaces, you can start to do something about it. And then the last reason that your limiting beliefs exist is because you have this lack of self-worth. So I've talked to you on several occasions about how I have this abundant faith in God. Like I know that He is capable of healing. I know that He is capable of changing the trajectory of lives. I know that He is capable of doing things exceedingly and abundantly. I know that. But for years, and I would even say decades, I questioned whether he thought that I was good enough for him to do it for me, which is, that perfectionism mindset that I've had, which is I have to be doing more, I have to be being more, I have to be spinning my wheels to be perfect in order for him to do this thing for me. Even though I had seen him do that thing for so many other people who weren't perfect, I felt in my being that in an effort to earn the spot of receiving his blessings, that I needed to be perfect and need to be doing more. And that was because an internal lack of self-worth existed in me that was greater than my faith, was greater than my belief in what God was capable of, was greater than even what I knew to be true about his love for people who love him and who serve him. And so that lack of self-worth continued to perpetuate a situation where I did not believe that abundance was going to happen for me. I did not believe that more was going to be in my story, because there are so many things that I held shame around. There's so many things from my past that I didn't believe made me good enough and qualified me for what God had for me. And so what do we do? How do we change those limiting beliefs? And this is a process that I'm currently sitting in. And this is what I found thus far. And I like to unravel my journey with you. There are things that I've experienced and come out on the other side of, like my healing journey and my story of belonging. And there are things that I'm currently processing that I love to share, because once the epiphany hits, I'm like, oh, I need to make sure that other people see this so they're not living in the bondage of that thing. So the first thing I did was I researched my thoughts. Why do I think this? Where did it come from? Who taught it to me? And once I did that, I said, let me process why I think this particular way of parenting is the right way. Where did that come from? Who taught it to me? Why do I think that this particular way of being is the good way of being? Where did it come from? Who taught it to me? Funny story, and I may have already told this, but it wasn't until 2016, that I realized that there were moms who didn't cook meals for their kids every night, right? And I know, shocker, like, who knew? But I was in a space where my family of origin, my mom cooked almost every night, my grandmother cooked almost every night. So I believed that that was part of being a good mom, was making sure that you had this home cooked meal that was, a vegetable, a protein, a starch, and you did it every single night. And I was talking to my coworkers, and one of my coworkers was like, "Oh yeah, so we're having fend for yourself night," and then the other one was like, "Oh yeah, we're doing cereal night." And I was like, "Wait, what is happening?" And they explained to me that they don't cook every night for their kids, and I was like, "Wait, how? Like, how did you process that your kids would still eat if you didn't cook a full meal for them?" They didn't come from families who did that. And so I tried to adopt the fend for yourself night, and my kids were so spoiled with the we're having something new every night that they were like, wait, what is this? We don't want to eat cereal. We don't want to fend for yourself night. And so we had to do some transitioning to that space. But I never knew that there was a whole world out there of not doing things the way that I had always thought that they needed to be done in order to be a good mom. And I believe that you're probably doing that to yourself currently. There are things that you're shoulding on yourself. I should do this because this is what I deem to be good. But where did that belief of good come from? There are a lot of people who think that if you leave your kids with their grandparents every weekend, then that makes you a bad person. That makes you a bad parent. And then there's a school of thought that if you leave your kids with their grandparents every weekend and you're working on your marriage and you're working on your relationship, then that is benefiting your children more than you actually being. And so there's this whole idea of what's good and what's not good. And those limiting beliefs have come from somewhere. You don't have to process your life through the opinions of other people and the beliefs that they have. You have to sit with yourself and say, where did that idea come from? And do I even agree with it? Where did that idea come from? And are there pieces of it that I want to take into my experience? Are there pieces of it that make me feel like the person that I'm purposed to be? And are there parts of this that I need to abandon because they're not mine? They were just handed down to me. And then the second part of this is in order to change your thinking, you have to train your brain into these new pathways. And I actually talked about this on the episode that I recorded that was about body image, because people often think that when you deal with an eating disorder that you're going to be this super skinny person. And most of the people that I know who are dealing with or have dealt with eating disorders, because the struggle is real inside of the eating disorder, they aren't this super skinny person that somebody would look at and be like, oh, they have an eating disorder. Those are the people who have I don't want to say the word succeeded at the eating disorder, but those are the people who can use willpower to get themselves to the skinniest they've ever been. And then there are people who are like me, that the battle was a daily and constant battle of, I need to eat this. Oh, now I'm binging, and that's a whole thing. And so the reality of that situation is I had to train my brain. There wasn't this magical, oh, I don't have an eating disorder anymore. The disordered thoughts are still there. They won't go away, right? There's not a morning that I'm going to wake up where it's just like, okay, eat everything that makes your body produce good results. Eat everything that's good for you. There's that struggle that says, okay, I need to eat because eating sustains life. And also, I don't want to feel like I'm out of control. And so I'm going to control the way I eat. There's this whole process. But that process is way better than it used to be because I've trained my brain to no longer rest in those spaces of the pathways that I created with the disordered thinking, the disordered eating thinking. And the same thing is true of the way that you process the limiting beliefs. You can still have the limiting belief, but eventually you have to have enough affirmations. You have to have enough insight into what you want your life to be like, what you want the abundance to look like. And when that limiting belief comes up that says, oh, you're not going to be able to pay for this because your finances aren't right, you change that limiting belief to something else. You might not have it right now, but you're going to have it in the future. And so don't say that you're never going to buy this thing, but say right now I can't, but eventually I will. I can't yet, right? And so it's that whole growth mindset. It's training your brain to think something different. And when you're changing your thinking, you have to change the idea of there's only one way to think, there's only one way to be, and there's only one way to do things, because that's not true. When you sit with yourself long enough and you realize where your beliefs came from, and you realize who taught it to you, and you realize that it doesn't necessarily match with where you want to be, then you change your thinking and train your brain to go to a different space. Something that Aquarius Wave said in one of the podcasts from last year. He said, I got to a space where I realized that I could stop my own thoughts. And it was an epiphany for him, like it is for many of us. You can stop your own thought patterns by just saying, I don't want to believe that anymore. I don't think that to be true. I'd like to question where this is coming from more than I'd like to ride the train of where it's taking me. And so you have to do that when you're changing your thinking. You have to retrain your brain. And then what else can you do to change your limiting beliefs? And this is the one that I'm holding so firmly to this year. You have to see yourself the way that God sees you. When when you think about a coach on a team, when a coach picks the point guard for his team, he doesn't just see the basketball skills in that point guard. He doesn't even only see the basketball skills and the basketball IQ, but something that is always looked for in a point guard is leadership, because you know that the point guard is going to lead the team. In fact, the energy that the point guard exudes is going to be contagious to your whole team. And so when you think about God as this like massive entity who is a coach to all of us, when he put us in this game of life, he knew what attributes you were going to need for the purpose and the spaces that he's putting you in. And because he knew it, and because you have to hold true to the fact that that play has already been made, it's already been organized, the X's and O's have been drawn on his whiteboard. If you don't see yourself as the player in this game that he created you to be, you're going to miss the shot every time, because you're going to overthink the position of your elbow. You're going to overthink the position of your hand. You're going to overthink the passes that you're going to make. You're not just going to call the play because you have the confidence in the play and your abilities. And so what I'm holding true to when I'm walking into this season of abundance is that there are limiting beliefs that exist there that I have to get rid of in order to see what he has for me. There are things that I know that he put inside of me. And I've been told by people who listen to my podcast who say, this is a gifting. It's not just something that pulled out from the sky. And it used to be really hard for me to actually internalize that, because it was like, oh, this is just what I do. These are conversations that I just have. And now I believe that he gifts us with the things that he has purposed us to do. And so now that I believe that that's a gifting, now that I believe that the experiences that I've had up until this point are in an effort for me to learn lessons so that I can share with other people to take them out of the bondage that's tearing their lives apart. Now that I see that, I have to continue to see myself the way that he sees me. I have to continue to be able to look in the mirror and say, I am beautifully and wonderfully made. I am going to live a life of abundance. My audiences are going to gain knowledge and wisdom that they didn't have before to get themselves out of their current situation. And not for me, but because this is the plan that I believe he created. And then I have to change my thinking. So when those thoughts come up where they say things like, oh, who's going to listen to you? Oh, look at where you're from. No one's going to listen to a girl from there. Oh, you don't have the training in this, or you don't have qualifications, or, all of these things. I have to change that. Oh, maybe I don't have the qualifications, but I'm called. Oh, maybe I'm from this place, but you don't have to be from certain places in order to speak life into other people. Oh, maybe he has a stutter, but he's up on that stage speaking into people. And so these limiting beliefs have to go. And the way they go is for me to immediately stop that thought and place it into a new space. And something that I'm learning and something that I'm holding on to is that it doesn't make me an outcast. It doesn't make me any less part of my familial system to not think like them, to not believe like them, to not walk like them, to not talk like them, to not be understood by them. Because the reality is, this life that God gave me is purposed for my walk, and he needs me to be me, not what has been downloaded into me. And so if you're on this journey and you need some guidance and assistance along the way, reach out to me on all social media sites, send me a DM, let me know that you need some help, and I will gladly send you some help in seeking this life of abundance and in walking in your word. And as always, don't forget to rate and like the podcast. Comes out every Monday on wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. If you're looking for a speaker for your engagement, go check out my LinkedIn profile. And also, as always, go to the website and carrienicole.com, and you can get your weekly dose of the blog. And if you subscribe, that comes straight to your email so that you don't have to remember that it comes out every Wednesday. Thank you guys for listening. I am so appreciative and so grateful that you tune in every week to hear ways that you can break free from the bondage that you're experiencing. And don't forget, on the YouTube channel, content comes out on a daily basis. So go there if you want more content from me. And I look forward to seeing you guys again next week.